Well, I think just to move things along, we'll just have the witnesses read these into the record. And there should be time enough. So Mike, do you have enough time to review that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we'll just have them read it in, but we can get started now, probably be useful. All right, so let's do that. All right. All right, well, let's get on the record. We'll just open up this proceeding. This is docket 6680 ER 103, the application of Wisconsin Power and Light Company for approval of its 2023 fuel cost plan. This is Mike Newmark, the administrative law judge. For the PSC, we have parties. It's like all the parties represented here and commission staff. And we are taking both the evidence of parties and commission staff as well as public comments here today. So let's just go off the record for a second. Mon, can you turn on the transcript, the live, the closed captioning too?
It's already on.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so back on the record. So it is an opportunity at this point, we can take public comments on this case. I see I'm looking at the participant list. It looks like I have everyone identified except for, I have everyone identified as connected with a party or commission staff, except for Brett Belling. So that's, or Bailing, it's Behling. So I was just curious if you remember the public. We're having trouble there.
Oh. Your Honor, he is with Wisconsin Power and Light.
Okay.
So he logged on. We're still trying to figure out the best way in this room to not cause echoes and that kind of thing. So he's logged on as well.
That's fine. Okay, so it appears at this time we have no members of the public in attendance for comments. So I'll ask at the end of the hearing in case someone does appear. But so that we all know, we'll accept comments in writing up until Thursday, September 22nd, either through the commission's website or by US mail. I don't have a tally of the current number of comments in front of me, but not expecting that there are many. So at this point, we can move on to the parties. And I'm just going to display briefly the service list that we have set up in the case so far. And just curious if parties have any corrections to the list that we need to make. No, doesn't look like it. So just briefly, I'm just going to stop the screen share so people can get a view of who's connected here. And let's move on with the offered evidence list. So I'm going to share that. We can go off the record now. So for the offered evidence list, we shared with parties and staff yesterday, I believe. And there's, of course, a few comments, a few questions for me, but I just wanted to know as we get started, are there any corrections we need to make to the documents that appear on the list? I know we do have Sir rebuttal from Wisconsin Power and Light. I guess I'll ask parties and staff whether they're comfortable with having that be submitted in writing, or if we should read it out for their benefit in going as we move along. But in terms of the list as it appears right now, any corrections we need to make? No. And any questions about the refilings or new filings?
Not from WPL, Your Honor.
All right. Okay. So I do have some questions. I think there may be a few witnesses that let's just get on the record quickly for this part. So we discussed the offered evidence list as it was shared with parties, and there appear to be no corrections or additions needed to the filings that are currently here. And I can accept those documents pending witness verification. So let's go off the record. There may be, so I have questions for a number of witnesses. Do parties and staff have questions for other witnesses besides those? So there's a bunch of questions. I kind of left it open to WPL to give us their best witness. So I don't know if Attorney Ramirez, if you have any direction with that, who we should direct those questions to.
Yes, Your Honor. So with regard to your generalized questions for WPL witnesses, we believe that witness Michek is able to answer those questions that you have generally listed there.
Okay.
The others that you had identified for specific witnesses, we believe those witnesses can address.
Okay. So in terms of the, there's Bell. Okay. Right. So Belling's a witness, so he'll need to appear. Yeah. Do I have any questions? So in terms of people that we have no questions for, yeah, I believe that's Belling and Dorn.
Your Honor, you did have questions for Belling.
Oh, did I? Oh, did I?
Well, at the end of your document, so I don't know how it's displaying in the side panel, but on the final pages of your offered evidence list, where you had under each heading in the version you emailed.
Yeah.
Might be at the very end, because I believe this is displaying your side comments.
That might not. Okay, well, it's in that. Okay, let me look at that.
It was questions related to WPL's selection of Gen Trader.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
I don't know why that's not showing up. Okay, well, maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, sorry. So I think Dorn is in the clear anyway. Let's see. Hilker, no. Soderman. I don't think. Soderman was in the clear. And I think that's it. So were there any questions for those witnesses from parties or staff?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I missed that. Which witnesses were you referring to?
Dorn and Sonderman.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we can accept those witnesses by affidavit if they want to do it, if you want to do it that way, or.
Your Honor, if acceptable, we'd prefer to just have them swear their testimony into
Okay,
the
that's
record.
fine. Okay, so otherwise we have everybody else. All right, thought I'd give you that chance. Okay, so So I think, yeah, maybe the best thing is to go into give another few minutes of recess. Let me review because I didn't get to read the Gulker Sir rebuttal. Probably better if I just read that ahead of time. So let's take a break. Meet back at 10:25. So you can turn off mics and video if you want. All right, well, it's 10, it may be 12 soon. It's 10:25, so let's see if we can get back together here. So I've had a chance to briefly review the Sursa rebuttal from witnesses Mychek and Golker.
Are you off?
Oh, no, we can be on the record. Sorry. So I've had a chance to review the testimony, the Sursa rebuttal of Golker and Mychek. Does anybody else need more time to review the writing there? No? All right, so hopefully tried my best to scan through it. I did have a number of questions for the witnesses. I think some of those have not been maybe answered directly by the Sursa rebuttal. Maybe there was some impact, or I think I maybe have a preview of some of the answers, but they haven't really been asked directly. So I think I'm going to continue with those questions. But also, I think at this time, therefore, we're ready for witnesses. So why don't we have our applicant call their first witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. WPL calls witness Brett Bailey.
Okay. Maybe you're on the other screen. Hang on.
To minimize distortions, Your Honor, he's just going to appear on my screen.
Okay, that's perfect. That works just fine. Okay, so let's swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Brett Bailey.
And did you file direct, supplemental direct, rebuttal, and 2 exhibits in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
To the best of your knowledge, is the information in your testimony and exhibits true and correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, this witness is available for cross-examination.
Okay, so any cross-examination for this witness? No, okay. So let me proceed with my questions. So I did want to mention, just as a general matter, just so we understand each other, the Wisconsin Power and Light did file most of its exhibits in Excel format. And so I've noted those that they need to be refiled in PDF. And I just want to bring that up because it seemed to be a new practice here that I want to just highlight. We continue to accept all the filings in a proceeding should be filed in PDF format. Okay, so anyway, let's move to the questions I had for witness Bailing. I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Bailing, yes.
Bailing, okay. So it relates to your direct on page 5, but just generally speaking, deals with the choice that Wisconsin Power and Light made to switch its fuel expense modeling, or I guess the economic dispatch model. So first question, why did Wisconsin Power and Light switch its fuel expense modeling software from enterprise planning and risk to PCI Gen Trader?
Your Honor, were you tying this back to a specific part of Mr. Bailing's direct?
That's listed at right above the question, direct page 5, 13 through 19.
I just want to make sure Mr. Bailing has an opportunity to turn there. I believe he's ready to answer these
Oh,
questions.
do you want me to show? I mean, it's
No,
just
he has
general.
a copy to refer to.
Okay, it's a general. I think I'm referencing where he's generally speaking about the software. So that's kind of the tie-in to his testimony.
Okay.
But the question is kind of independent of the testimony itself, I believe. It's just simply looking at getting some background at the choice of a new dispatch model. So let me just read that question again then. So why did Wisconsin Power and Light switch its fuel expense modeling software from enterprise planning and risk to PCI Gen Trader?
So, Your Honor, enterprise planning and risk dispatch software was no longer being supported by the vendor. So
Okay.
we switched to a new tool.
Okay, great. Okay, so then any difference between enterprise planning and risk and PCI GenTrader with respect to the extent to which Wisconsin Power and Light has the right to share with commission staff information related to the operations of the software and the modeling results?
Your Honor, there is no difference between EP&R or enterprise planning and risk and PCI GenTrader.
Okay. And do you know of any other utilities that use PCI GenTrader to model fuel expense?
Your Honor, I am aware that there are other utilities that use PCI GenTrader. However, I'm not exactly certain as to how they use it.
Okay. And can you name a few?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Are they any of them Wisconsin utilities?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. All right. I think that's all I have for you. Any follow-up questions from interveners and staff? No. Okay. How about redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Great. Okay. Thank you very much. You're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
WPL calls witness Harvey Dorn.
All right. Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Harvey Dorn.
And did you prepare direct, supplemental direct, surrebuttal, and 5 exhibits in this proceeding?
I did.
To the best of your knowledge, is the information in your testimony and exhibits true and correct?
They are.
Thank you. Your Honor, this witness is available for cross-examination.
Okay, any questions? And you're the lucky one, I have no questions. So thank you, you're excused.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if the parties continue to have no questions and you also do not have questions for witness Sonderman, I'd like to take her out of order.
Okay, yeah, it's the order's up to you. Yeah.
Okay. WPL calls witness Morgan Sonderman.
Okay, let me swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Need to hear you. Nope. It looks like you're unmuted, but you're not coming through. You can go off the record till we figure this out. Good luck. It is possible to call in if that's necessary. Do we want to skip to the next witness and have witness Sonderman figure that out in the meantime?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, all right. So let's get on the record. Who's our next witness?
WPL calls witness Neil Michek.
Okay, see you there. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
And Your Honor, did you want to remain with your instruction to have Mr. Michek read his sur rebuttal from the stand, or would it be acceptable to accept his written?
I'm okay with it written at this point. Do any parties want that read out, or have they followed along in writing so far?
No objection to the written offering.
None from Cub either.
Thank you. Could you please state your name for the record?
Neil Michek.
And did you submit direct, rebuttal, sir rebuttal, and 2 exhibits in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And to the best of your knowledge, is the information in your testimony and exhibits true and correct?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, this witness is available for cross-examination.
Okay, so do we have any questions from the parties? Nothing, commission staff? No, all right. So let's see, I think Attorney Ramirez said that the general questions were appropriate for witness Michek. Is that still correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, Your Honor, that is.
Okay, so let's start with those. So I did provide these questions as well as the bailing questions ahead of time to parties and staff as part of the offered evidence list. So there should be no surprise to anyone, but just wanted to read through these and get responses. So first set of questions, I'd indicated that I'd like Wisconsin Power and Light to identify the witness that's most appropriate to answer these, and that would be lucky you, witness Michek. So let's get started here. So question 1, the commission routinely approves fuel cost plans that make adjustments to the inputs the applicant used to create its proposed fuel cost plan. Is that correct?
Yes, during the course of commission staff audit, they'll frequently suggest modifications to the inputs that WPL or other utilities have proposed, to the extent that there is no disagreement to those adjustments. Then they're reflected in the final fuel cost plan. And then to the extent that there are disagreements between WPL and the commission staff, then ultimately the commission itself will make the decision, and the final results will be approved in the fuel cost plan.
All right, thanks. Question 2, has the commission ever made adjustments to the output, and I have parentheses, the average annual cost of fuel or the monthly cost of fuel, close parentheses, of the economic dispatch model?
So to my memory or recollection, I'm not aware of any specific adjustments to the ending results of this economic dispatch modeling results for WPL. I can't speak specifically to all other utilities' fuel cost plans. I do, if my recollection is correct, I recall that the commission for 1 year utilized or basically extended an approved fuel cost plan for MG&E to apply to a second year, rather than a new economic dispatch model. But that's my recollection. But I'm not aware of, real specific adjustments to the dispatch modeling results at the back end.
And just so we're clear, how long have you been involved with the production of economic dispatch modeling for fuel cost plan purposes in Wisconsin?
As it relates to fuel, the majority of my 20 years at Alliant Energy have involved some participation in the fuel cost plans for WPL. Not every year, but the majority of those 20 years. When I was at the commission, I was rarely involved in the fuel cost plans.
Okay, so we can skip on. So here's next question. At Direct Cub Singletary, page 3, lines 7 through 9, witness Singletary states, and I quote, high market prices potentially increase coal delivery constraints and operational risks related to Edgewater 5, give me cause for concern, end quote. And next part of that question, does this statement accurately describe at a high level the factors that are causing uncertainty in this case?
I would say as it pertains to Edgewater 5, and given the term operational risks is a very broad term, I think that's accurate for a key component of the risks. However, as stated in my testimony, my direct testimony, there are other risks that we would identify that apply to facilities other than Edgewater 5, in particular operational performance of the plants themselves, coal delivery to other units, market prices that we would be applicable to other units. So I don't think it is limited to Edgewater 5 as it pertains to the risks.
Okay, so the operational risks you're talking about go beyond Edgewater 5.
Correct, as do market price risks.
Okay. And so what other units are you talking about? Is it the Columbia units, or are there other ones as well?
Well, yeah, for Columbia in particular, being a coal-fired unit would have the similar risks with regards to coal delivery concerns. Similar to Edgewater 5, as we've been anticipating and planning for the ultimate retirement of those units. We had backed down maintenance in anticipation of retirement. Now that we have announced that we're going to extend those retirements out a couple years, operations decisions will have to be made, as to what maintenance is justified given the benefits as we move forward through time to the new retirement dates.
Okay.
That you asked about the other one, the other facilities, probably the keystone facilities outside of Edgewater and Columbia would be the Riverside and West Riverside combined cycle units. And, the forced outage rates at those units have been higher than what I guess we would desire or even have modeled in some instances here throughout the case. So, there is continued operational risk at those facilities as well.
Okay. Thank you. So just so I understand, the forced outage rates for the units you described reflected in the fuel cost plan, do those rates reflect the risk that you're concerned about, or could they be higher than in terms of the input? Or could they be higher than the inputs that you used in the plan?
My understanding, and Mr. Gelker can correct me if I'm wrong when he comes up, but our recent experience with, in particular, West Riverside has had forced outage rates higher than what is reflected in the plan currently. So there's, would view that as additional risk relative to recent history in the plan.
Okay. Any reason why you wouldn't use those increased forced outage rates from past experience as an input?
And again, I will,
Okay.
Eric can clarify if I misstate this.
Sure.
But the forced outage rates at West Riverside have been a topic of debate in WPL's fuel cost plans, I believe in each of the last two fuel cost plans. And the commission in its last case, I believe that the numbers put a 7.5% forced outage rate into the plan. I believe that is what we have reflected in the plan. But again, I would, Mr. Gelker, or if he doesn't recall, Mr. Bailing would be able to confirm or correct.
And so I guess we'll move on. I'm curious because the phrase high market prices is used in this description that witness Singletary provided. And I want to ask him what he meant by that exactly. But since I'm asking you if you agree or not, I need to know what you think that term means.
Well,
Your
I
Honor,
think it's,
Your Honor, may I clarify the question? Are you asking Mr. Michek to opine on what Mr. Singletary meant?
No,
Or are,
I'm asking what he thinks that how he would define that term. So let me just read the question, maybe better. So what items are included in the phrase high market prices in your opinion?
Your Honor, would it be helpful? Is there a portion of Mr. Michek's testimony where he also addressed market prices?
There may be, but I'm not really asking him about that. I'm asking about, he said that he agrees that the statement that witness Singletary made accurately describes at a high level the uncertainties in the case. So now I'm asking him to clarify what that means in terms of high market prices as one of the factors that he agrees is part of the uncertainty.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm.
and with that clarification, I would clarify high market prices kind of as follows. One of the first ones being the MISO energy market prices. In my direct exhibit 2, I provide information about historical ALTE on peak and off peak locational market prices for the period 2017 through 2020, June of 2022. And that information kind of shows an upward trend in those market prices, particularly recently. In addition, the natural gas forward prices, which I believe are provided in exhibits submitted by either Mr. Bailing or commission staff, witness Mike Ritzema or both, are up relative to history. Coal prices have been a little bit more stable, other than some volatility around fuel oil surcharge costs over time. So when I refer to the high market prices, I think it's really the key inputs across the fuel cost plan.
Okay. And just to be clear, the MISO, you mentioned the energy market price. Is that synonymous with the LMP or is that something different?
I would consider it synonymous with the LMP, yes.
All right. Thanks for that. All right, next question. Provide a working definition of the phrase extraordinary circumstances as it relates to the mid-year rate adjustment under PSC 116.08.
Your Honor, just as a clarification for your question, are you asking Mr. Michek to opine on the legal meaning of that term within that rule, or is it a question of a different nature?
Yeah, working definition. So if he's reviewing the plans and he's reviewing actual results during the plan year, what's going to strike him to say that's an extraordinary circumstance? I think I'm going to bring this to my superiors or whatever the process is at WPL to tell them, hey, I think we need to look at a mid-year adjustment because we have an extraordinary circumstance on our hands. So that's what I'm looking for. And if there's an answer he can give in terms of company policy, I'll take that. If there's an answer that he can give in terms of personal opinion, I'll take that too. Just let us know which one it is.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So as my attorney noted, I'm not an attorney, and this is not a legal definition. This is there is no working definition in Alliant Energy policy to define an extraordinary circumstance. I think in layman's terms, you'll know it when you see it. type of situation. If I think back, there's only been one situation in which any utility has proposed or applied for a mid-year adjustment, and that was a WPL instance several years ago due to a materially long lasting outage at a key generating facility. So there isn't a historical context where the commission has kind of defined it either any further than what's in the rule itself. I don't know if beyond that, it's, again, at some level, you'll know it when you see it, but it would have to be something that is driving a material change up or down in the fuel costs that was just flat out completely unexpected, in my mind, would be kind of the layman's term.
Okay, probably need the attorneys to debate that one as to what you say there, because I mean, I guess the problem I think is that we are expecting unpredictable costs in this case. So if we're expecting it, shouldn't it be in the plan? But it's unknowable. So how can it be in the plan? So I mean, so it really ties it to the next question. So when my question is, describe the circumstances that may occur in 2023 under which, I'm sorry?
Oh, we lost the feed for a moment, Your Honor.
Oh, okay.
I believe we didn't much.
Okay, there you go. So the next question was, describe the circumstances in 2023, and I suppose that really means describe the circumstances that may occur in 2023 under which Wisconsin Power and Light would apply for a mid-year rate adjustment under PSC 116.08. And I think what I want to qualify that is to say, we know that there's certain inputs that are very uncertain. So to what extent do the results of those inputs need to, in actuality, change from the plan that would induce you to consider applying for a mid-year rate increase?
Your Honor.
Yeah.
Just for a clarification about this witness's foundation to answer questions. What I heard in your question was a bit of a company-wide decision. So I just want to clarify the scope of your question for Mr. Michek of things that he might look to, but I believe it's not within his foundation to be able to speculate on what the company ultimately would decide with regard to a filing. I believe that falls outside of his authorization.
Yes, that's correct. So from a technical perspective, yes. Not from a company policy perspective.
All right. With those clarifications, I mean, and knowing that all of these, any such circumstance calls for some level of speculation about what might change, correct? I think some of the factors that would be considered would be, one, how material is the fuel cost variance? When do you find out about that fuel cost variance, and your reasonable expectation is that fuel cost variance going to continue? You would probably also factor in, what is the reasonable, regulatory process timeline and outcome available, given that knowledge of when of the situation's precedent and the timing, as well as other activities that are ongoing, whether regulatory on behalf of the company and the commission's calendar, as well as even considering what does the following year forecast tell you at that time? For example, if one were anticipating an under collection in 1 year, but fuel costs going down the next year, it may be very reasonable and appropriate to not file for a mid-year adjustment, but rather allow those offsetting impacts naturally offset. I mean, so there's just too many different things, too many variables to really say with any certainty that there would be, one specific or any specific certain circumstance where you would apply for a mid-year rate adjustment. But what we can say is, based on history, it's rare.
Mhm. Okay, well, I appreciate the answer. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have for the general questions that we started with. So actually, I do have a few more. Almost forgot there. You're not off. I don't think. Yes, there we go. Ha. Okay. Okay, so this relates more to your testimony, and I can bring that up if you like. But
I have it in front of me.
okay, all right. So I think I do quote these phrases, so I can just read them from here. So yes, there's a little more elaboration from your direct page 13, lines 3 through 10. And I'm going to quote, what additional steps to help ensure timely and sustainable delivery of coal to its coal-fired generation facilities, close quote, has Wisconsin Power and Light taken?
So, Your Honor, I think to answer this question with any kind of specificity would have to be in closed session.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is kind of a new age here with Zoom and YouTube. So just may take a bit to get this going. So we're gonna, we want to keep the YouTube stream going, but we don't want anything to get out on YouTube or anyone else who's not authorized. So to hear the confidential information. So first, I'm just gonna put up a little note to the public here that we'll be in closed session. That. And then what I'm going to need to do is put everyone into a breakout room. Maybe, can I do that, Mon? Or do you, and we're off the record. Sorry if I didn't make you do all that, did I? No, you're not that. Yeah. So are you there? Can I do breakout rooms or?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I can create it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Oh, wait, breakout rooms. Hang on. Oh, I can. Okay. Let participants choose room assigned automatically. Let me try that. 18 participants per room. I think we can do that. We have 20 right now. But if I exclude the witnesses who've been excused so far, we'll have 18. So how does that sound, everyone? So, okay. So I don't know if this is going to put everyone in there right away or if I have to do this in a different way. But let's try it. Debbie. So it's letting me put 18 people in the room, but it just, so I think if I have to do it manually, if I want to pick those people. I'm just trying to see who's not included. So we have all of Cub, Court Reporter, Heinz and Power and Light. I think, I don't know who's missing here. I'm gonna try creating this room and see what happens. So I can invite it to join. So you need to join if you've been invited. I think I need to join the room. Turn to screen share. Okay. Well, it's going to stop the screen share if I join the room, so it's not going to give us that message. But
That's fine. I will stay here and then I will do the message.
okay, all right, great. Stop and join. Okay.
Your Honor, I believe I'm unable to hear you.
Muted. Huh, that's
Sorry.
interesting. Thanks. Yeah, because it mutes automatically. Okay, it looks like we're back. All right, great. So let me share this screen. Complaints. And we have, so who are we calling next?
Your Honor, WPL calls witness Eric Gelker.
All right, see you there. So raise your right hand. Swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, go ahead.
And Your Honor, would it be possible for you to share on screen Exhibit Gelker 1?
I believe so. Oh. I'm gonna have to open the file here. All right. So let me know if I'm in the right spot.
Your Honor, if you're able to navigate over just so that the line number column is gone. We don't need the line number column. We would just need columns B through the end of the period.
Through.
And that should be sufficient. We're getting most of July on ours. So this view is
Okay.
sufficient for our needs, Your Honor.
I can extend that a little bit. There you go. Okay, so I think on the screen we have Gelker 1. I think there's just one page, and it's the part of the exhibit there. So, okay, go ahead.
Wait, could you please state your name for the record?
Eric J. Gelker.
And in this proceeding, did you file rebuttal and sir rebuttal testimony and one exhibit?
Yes, I did.
And to the best of your knowledge, is the information you filed true and correct?
Yes,
And then, Your Honor, consistent with your allowing us to not read the sir from the stand, then I would say this witness is available for cross-examination.
Okay.
Just wanted
Yes.
his exhibit up for him and the parties to refer to for your questions.
Okay, let's just make sure anyone want to have the sir rebuttal read out.
No, as to the readout, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I said no to the readout, Your Honor.
Okay, I concur. So we will, let me just see if I can add that in to the evidence list. Okay. All right, so any cross-examination for the witness?
Staff has just one quick question.
Okay, how about interveners first? Nothing. Okay, go ahead. Attorney Richkovitz.
Yes, and thank you, Your Honor, for having the exhibit up. Witness Gelker, I'm looking at the row here that has 17%. It's labeled as maximum excess generation percentage allowed. Could you describe your methodology behind the selection of this 17% number?
yes, the 17% number that's showing on that row, that's the maximum generation, excess generation percent that WPL has experienced to date in 2022 for a given month. And that maximum excess generation percentage allowed the 17% occurred in the month of July of 2022.
Thank you. And could you just explain a little bit further what's the technical basis for the selection of that particular number, 17%?
Yes, so the basis for that selection was examining a recent period where we've had the higher market prices that we've discussed, and a period of time where we had more significant demand for energy in the market, since that was a summertime period, and had availability of generation to use in instances of higher demand. For example, with the discussion we've had regarding coal conservation, the impact of that is more limited during the higher demand periods and looking at that period to get a benchmark to understand with the higher market prices that we've experienced, what level of excess generation was attainable from the WPL portfolio.
Thank you very much. Just 1 second here. All right, no further questions.
Okay. Great. So I have a few questions for you, Witness Gelker, and I can refer to the offered evidence list. And I guess when I wrote this, I was dealing with your rebuttal. So, and I did get a chance to review your Sir rebuttal. But to be honest with you, I don't know if you answered that question, these questions or not. So I'm just going to ask them now. So if your answer is, so when giving your answer, I guess if you could answer according to your latest proposal, if anything's changed since rebuttal. So generally speaking, I guess what I was curious about from a kind of a 30,000 foot view, is your proposed adjustment an adjustment to a fuel cost plan input or a fuel cost plan output?
The adjustment that I've made is an adjustment to output from the fuel cost plan model, from the economic dispatch model. It uses the results of those models, select results from those models as an input to the process that I've illustrated in the exhibit that I provided.
Okay, so you're not proposing to change how much the plants run as they would be picked by the model. You're making an adjustment to the output after the model picks the operation of those plants. You're making adjustment to what the economic model already provides.
Yes.
Okay. And so then my follow-up question is the next one I need to ask. So could other adjustments to the fuel cost plan, could adjustments to the fuel cost plan inputs based, and let me rephrase this then. Okay, start over. Could adjustments to the fuel cost plan inputs align the fuel cost plan closer to the goals that you're looking to set for the fuel cost plan in 2023?
Well, certainly changing inputs in the model would change the results that the fuel cost plan model would provide. However, there's no input in the fuel cost plan model that specifically addresses the issue of excess generation. And so the adjustment that I'm making is focusing on limiting the amount of excess generation. And I'm doing that in a kind of a stepped process in which I'm taking the results from the model and then imposing that constraint on the output results from the model after the model has provided the results given the various input assumptions that are made, including the input assumption about what the future market prices will be during 2023.
Okay. So I just wanted you to comment on a different proposal, I suppose, and get your opinion on this. So, I mean, is it possible to reduce the amount of the excess, what's the excess generation that the model produces by changing inputs, for example, like the LMP, and an input that we may not have certainty on and the predictions look very different than history. And I think LMP is one of those inputs. So to moderate an input that seems to go beyond historical experience, if that was changed, if that, for example, LMP input was changed, could the model produce a result that creates less excess generation?
I think if the LMP prices in the model were lowered, you would likely see less excess generation produced, especially during periods where we have those extremely high market prices. However, you'd also have other impacts to the results that come from the model that may be less directly related to excess generation. For example, if we would reduce those prices, then it would also reduce the value that is being provided in terms of the fuel cost that's coming from the excess generation that we believe is reasonable excess generation. And so you would get a commingling of some changes that would be less isolated and less, they'd be less, I guess, transparent than the adjustment that we're making that focuses strictly on excess generation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any opinion on adjusting a model input to when that input is unpredictable and there could be past experience that would provide a way to mitigate the unpredictability of an input?
Your Honor, might I request a clarification of that?
You might. So let me give you an example, because I apologize, but I don't remember how far back your experience goes with Power and Light. It may go back much further than mine, but than my time with the commission. But from what I know about what the commission has done in the past fuel rule proceedings. Now, this may be before the fuel cost plan, but at times when, for example, natural gas prices were volatile and unpredictable, commission staff proposed a way to tamp down the volatility by looking at the average of 2 years worth of NYMEX prices. So I think it took the spot price from I think like a late fall month in the prior year, as well as a spot price from the current year, and average them. And I might be getting that wrong, but the point being that the commission staff agreed to use that method. The commission agreed to use that method, and the idea would be to mitigate, to moderate some of the volatility by looking at it, taking an average of historical prices, at least one historical price, and then maybe the forecasted price. But would that be another way of addressing volatility and costs that are too uncertain to accurately predict?
Well, that would be, I guess that would be a way of coming up with an alternative assumption, an input assumption to the model regarding what's expected for price. It won't in and of itself inherently address the excess generation. It may, but if it does, it would be somewhat coincidental, depending on what prices were used. And then it also would have other impacts on the resulting fuel cost as well. Again, for example, the excess generation that did remain would provide presumably a lower margin than what's provided in the current plan results that we're looking at, because the price would be adjusted and be used at a different level across all the different facets of the model.
Yep. Okay. But would you agree that it directly addresses the unpredictable nature of an input?
I don't know if it directly addresses the unpredictable nature of the input, because it provides a different assumption, but I think inherently the unpredictable issue we're trying to address is we don't know what the realized price will be, and there's different implications if prices are extremely high or extremely low, and they interact and they work differently in the dispatch modeling and have different consequences when you look at your output.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have for you. So thank you very much. Any questions, follow-ups from interveners or staff? No, there was one question about that we did in confidential. Call it yet. Okay, well, I think we got a general sense from witness my checks. I think that's probably all we really needed. Let me ask you, you were in attendance when witness my check gave his answers here today?
Yes, I was.
Did you have anything do you feel like should be clarified? Or let me just say, so are there any answers that witness my check gave that you would answer differently or provide in more detail?
No, the answers that witness Meachek provided, I would provide the same answers as he provided to the questions that were asked.
Okay. All right. Okay, and any redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks very much. You're excused.
Thank you.
And then WPL calls witness Morgan Sonderman.
All right, let's try it.
Can you hear me this time?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I just
clear.
moved to my office. So new
Okay.
microphone.
Oh, good. See, there's always a chance for an upgrade.
Yes.
All right, so raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Morgan Sonderman.
And do you have a clarification regarding your title that you'd like to provide?
Yes. In my direct testimony, I'm listed as a senior financial analyst, and I am now a lead financial analyst.
Thank you. And did you file in this proceeding direct, supplemental direct testimony, and 3 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
And with the update that you made with regard to your title, then is the information provided in your testimony and exhibits true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Your Honor, this witness is available for cross-examination.
Okay, questions? No one? Okay, thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving ahead, I think we have Cub next. I did have questions for witness Singletary.
Cub calls witness Corey Singletary.
All right, swear you in. You swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Please spell your name for the record.
COREYSINGLETARY.
Mr. Singletary, did you prepare and file direct testimony in this proceeding?
Yes.
And is that testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to review the source or rebuttal of Power and Light witnesses Gelker and Michek this morning?
I did.
And does anything in that, do you have anything to add to your testimony at this time based on that recently filed testimony?
No, after review of Wisconsin Power and Light's filed source or rebuttal, that my testimony has not changed. And just, I also prepared and caused to be filed sur rebuttal in this testimony in addition to my direct testimony.
Okay. All right, my apologies. Is that Sir rebuttal true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
And do you have anything to add
I do not.
this time? All right, Mr. Singletary is available for questions and cross.
Any cross?
Not from WPL, Your Honor.
Okay, yes, I'm seeing nothing for anyone else. So let me proceed with my questions. We can't get off that easily. So I'll try to run through these a little more quickly. They do relate to your, first one relates to your direct page 3, line 7 through 9, your statement about what risks give you cause for concern. And I just wanted you to please define what you meant by high market prices.
When I use the term high market prices here, I was thinking of two things, which are generally consistent with Mr. Mitchek's testimony earlier. Principally, when I speak about high market prices, I'm using it in the same way that many other witnesses in this proceeding are using it, in the same way that other witnesses are using it, which is to refer to high energy market prices in the MISO region. So that's sort of the principal consideration, but other market price considerations that Mr. Mitchek brought up this morning, like gas prices, and other commodity costs and whatnot, were also, considered.
Okay, and they would, so they would be additional concerns that would give you, that additional factors that would give you cause for concern. When
Considering the question of the output from the fuel cost plan model and looking at issues of uncertainty and risk, as compared to, say, previous years when costs were more stable, when energy market prices weren't as high and as volatile as they are now, I would say relative to past experience, just sort of generally in Wisconsin and with Wisconsin and Power and Light, that yes, those were considerations with respect to risk and uncertainty.
Okay. Okay. So I think I asked this with witness Mychek, but are there any other inputs to the fuel cost plan that give you cause for concern besides the ones that you listed in your testimony?
I mean, not insofar as whether or not a particular input that was used in the fuel cost plan model was inappropriately chosen or set, but rather that there's perhaps a wider band of uncertainty around some of those around those inputs. Things like unit availability were discussed today and in pre-filed testimony. Whether or not delivered coal prices will meet up with expectations. But as to the actual inputs run through the model, I don't have concern about that. It's more viewing it from the perspective of evaluating the output and then thinking qualitatively about what could affect actual fuel costs in the actual fuel plan year as we live it as customers next year in 2023. That was sort of the central focus of my testimony, not so much the actual numerical inputs to the model.
Okay. So I just want to confirm your understanding. I think we got witness Gulker's understanding of this next question. Is the Gulker proposed adjustment an adjustment to a fuel cost plan input or the result or a result of the fuel cost plan?
My understanding, which was confirmed by Mr. Gulker this morning, is that it was an adjustment applied after the model is run. It's I view it as sort of an external adjustment to the model results to limit excess generation. That may not be a technically accurate term with respect to actually pushing the buttons in the model, but from the perspective of again, evaluating sort of the reasonableness of using the raw fuel cost plan model outputs versus the sort of externally adjusted or explicitly adjusted results that Mr. Gulker presented in his rebuttal. I view it as after, I guess to your point, it's after, it's not an input, it's more adjusting the outputs.
Okay, And do you have an opinion on attempting to tamper the output of an economic dispatch model by adjusting the inputs instead of the outputs? I'll just leave it at that if you can answer that.
Sure. So I am not an expert in the use of the actual fuel cost plan model in and of itself, but in my experience in dealing with modeling exercises, and in particular sort of evaluating the way that models are used in utility regulation, certainly one could attempt to modify inputs to reflect certain maybe alternative, as Mr. Gilker described it, alternative expectations with respect to model inputs. I guess, putting my policy analyst hat on, I kind of view that as making the conversation more complicated than perhaps it needs to be with respect to this specific issue. The reason I say that is that I don't think there has been any testimony thus far that anyone believes that the inputs to the model to date themselves, as we sit here today, don't represent sort of good faith best estimates based on what we know right now. So to my knowledge, no one's really arguing about the inputs. It's more that the model produces a result that does not track with history and produces a situation where if we were to just accept the raw model outputs as truth, as it were, and then run that through the rate making process, that it produces a situation where there is a high likelihood. I would characterize it as a high likelihood, not even as just high risk. It's a high probability that there will be under recovery of fuel costs, which will then have to be borne by customers. So I view it as if the issue is related to sort of an anomalous result with respect to excess generation, and there really isn't an issue with respect to the sort of raw core inputs, then if the problem we're trying to solve for is excess generation, then I think Mr. Gilker's proposed approach is one way to explicitly target that as a way to moderate the effect of that within the fuel cost plan and the estimated monitored fuel cost level for 2023.
And do you see the problem in the plan year being the excess generation, or is the excess generation just a way of moderating the difference between what the average annual cost of fuel without that adjustment would be compared to what it is with the excess generation adjustment?
Consistent with my testimony to this point, I think one of the principal concerns, again, insofar as evaluating the model results and whether or not they are consistent with what we kind of know and we know from history with operation of the utilities facilities, that the excess generation is a principal concern. Again, as I noted in my testimony, particularly if you consider recent monitored fuel cost performance relative to fuel cost levels experienced by the company, and that the impact of this issue as it plays out in reality, in real time, as the company delivers electricity service, is a substantial and material issue, where in the past it's just been sort of I'm going to over diminish this, but essentially kind of a throwaway issue in a fuel cost proceeding. These sort of excess or margin revenues were just sort of a secondary issue. Whereas in the context of all of the input factors, all of the broader macroeconomic things we've been discussing in this proceeding, it becomes a real issue here. And certainly if you look at the fact that even with Mr. Gilker's adjustment, I believe it was either Mr. Mitchek or Mr. Gilker noted that even with that, I believe the fuel costs, the monitored fuel cost level that's suggested, even applying that approach, is still fairly low. Potentially there could be opportunity to refine the inputs, but in my experience, that potentially opens a can of worms about really just arguing out about a whole bunch of different things and not really addressing maybe the big key drivers that we're looking at. And my concern would be that the commission could potentially get lost in the weeds arguing about 4 or 5 or 6 or even just a small handful of inputs to try to solve for one particular thing when potentially there's a better solution or a simpler solution that provides better clarity on what we're trying to solve for.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so move on. Provide a working definition of the phrase extraordinary circumstances as it relates to the mid-year rate adjustment under PSC 116.08.
I honestly don't have a better one that Mr. Michek gave earlier, which is you kind of know it when you see it. I think it would be something that would truly be unexpected and would have a material impact on fuel costs in the year. My sense would be, again, within that sort of qualitative, it when you see it, is it would likely be associated with either a significant disruption in operations specific to power and light, or would be tied to some sort of major macroeconomic factor.
Okay, so when you say unexpected, it's something that it's not something that would be unpredictable, but a factor that we know is unpredictable. It would be something that's unpredictable that we don't know is going to occur.
Sorry, I'm trying to unpack your question.
Without quoting Dick Cheney.
It could be it could be related to things we don't know, right? Certainly those types of things fall into that category, but also it could be extraordinary circumstances related to factors that we are aware of that are unpredictable, but certainly there are things that people would characterize as a black swan event could fall into that category as well.
Okay, thanks. So just follow up, describe the circumstances in 2023 under which you would expect Wisconsin Power and Light to apply for a mid-year rate adjustment.
From my perspective, when I would expect the company to file a mid-year rate adjustment if there was this sort of extraordinary event that had a material impact on fuel costs relative to the set fuel cost plan, that also affect the utilities earnings.
Okay. So I'm just curious about your opinion, whether you think it's appropriate that the part of the consideration to look into applying for a mid-year rate adjustment would be looking at the forecast for the next year to see if possibly any undercollection or overcollection in the current year would be mitigated by what rates would be set for the next plan year.
I believe what you're describing has, to some extent, been done in past proceedings, not maybe with respect to a mid-year adjustment, but with respect to fuel cost plans generally and the reconciliation of those costs. I don't think that there's a problem with doing the look of taking a look, whether or not it's appropriate to then go so far as to say that applying possible future offsets to current, test year or fuel plan year under or over recoveries is appropriate would really be fact specific, and would potentially be related to how certain we were about those potential future offsets. Is it within the realm of things that the commission has considered and approved in the past? Yes, but again, like I said, it's very fact specific with respect to what's driving deviations in the fuel cost plan that we are seeing in reality versus what's the likelihood and the nature of future offsetting costs in the future.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have. So any follow-up from interveners or commission staff? Oh, and Wisconsin Power and Light, sorry.
No, Your Honor.
Nothing. All right. So how about redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. You're
Thank
excused.
you.
Okay. So we can move on to staff witnesses.
Your Honor, staff would request a 2 to 5 minute recess just to get some water and just take a very quick break.
Personal privilege. All right.
Yes.
Let's take 15. We'll get back at, let's just make it, let's make it 12:15. How about that?
Thank you.
Oh, that was fast.
Can I read this? 47 people charged in alleged scheme and stole $250 million from food.
Mark, thanks for asking for a break. If you didn't, I was going to.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yep. I managed to get lunch in.
Right. Well, we're back. It's to 12:15. So let's see if we have everyone back here. I think everyone we need is present. So let's have us begin with commission staff witnesses.
Yes, Your Honor. Commission staff calls Jason Stevenson, please.
There you are. I'll swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please
Okay.
state.
Can we just take a second off the record? Just get your microphone adjusted. Maybe didn't come out too clear. You're muted right now. I don't know if there's something.
Is this any better?
That's okay. Yeah, there's like a buzzing sound at the beginning, but I think it went away. So let's hope. Oh, there it is again.
Sorry about that. There was work being done outside and I just got them to stop.
Oh, boy. Uh-oh, we're not disturbing the peace here. Okay. All right. So where were we? Question. Yeah.
going to begin, Your Honor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Please state your name for the record.
Jason Stevenson.
And what is your position at the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin?
I'm a public utility rate analyst.
And have you had a chance to review the offered evidence list that's been presented on the screen today at this hearing and was circulated to the parties prior to the hearing?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And did you file direct testimony in one exhibit in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any additional corrections to your testimony in exhibit beyond what was mentioned in the offered evidence list at this time?
No, I do not.
So if I asked you the same questions today, would you provide the same answers that you provided in your testimony, withholding any of those corrections?
Yes, I would.
All right, thank you. The witness is available.
All right, thank you. I did want to mention before we go further that staff, because I may forget if we don't do it now, staff was expected, or let me just confirm if staff will be filing a data request response exhibit. And if you want to answer that, Attorney Reshkovitz. I don't know if
I believe that is the situation here, but I'll allow the witness to contradict me if that is the case.
Right. So that's the expectation. Do we know what it'll contain? I think there were references to the Stevenson 1 response. We probably want that in the exhibit. Do you know what else we'll expect to see in there? So will it be all of the responses?
I believe it's all responses. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So and then the public comment exhibit, just so you know, it's pending. If we get more than five or more comments, we'll make a public comment exhibit. Okay, just want to make sure we had that clarified. Okay, so are there any cross-examination questions for the witness?
Not from WPL, Your Honor.
Okay, yeah, don't hear from interveners. So that's all we need. Thanks very much. You're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just 1 second, Your Honor, please. All right, commission staff calls Mike Ritzma, please.
There you are. Raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm? Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Unmute.
Oops.
Nope. Okay, just give us your answer for that question.
I do.
Okay, perfect. All right, yeah, the flick of the switch there. Tricky. Okay, go ahead.
Please state your name for the record.
Michael A. Ritzema,
And what is your position at the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin?
Public Utility Auditor Principal.
And have you had a chance to review the offered evidence list that was circulated prior to the hearing and has been up on the screen during the hearing?
Yes.
Thank you. And did you file direct testimony and rebuttal testimony in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And did you file exhibits labeled Exhibit PSC Ritzma 1 and Exhibit PSC Ritzma 2 in this proceeding?
Yes.
And do you intend to make the corrections that have been identified in the offered evidence list as to a forthcoming exhibit, revised exhibit of Ritzma 3 and 4?
I understand. I'm not sure what Exhibit 4 is. Exhibit 3 was the Westlaw printout of 6680 UR 114. I'm not sure what Exhibit 4 pertains to unless it is for the exhibit that I will be putting in regarding the NYMEX update.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any additional corrections to your testimony or exhibits at this time?
No, I do not.
And if you were asked the same questions today, would you provide the same answers that you provided in your testimony, withholding any of these corrections?
Yes, I would.
And have you also had a chance to review the rebuttal testimony that was filed and offered on behalf of the applicant in this case?
I believe you meant
Sir?
Sir rebuttal?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I have.
Okay. And in response to either those filings or anything else that's been stated here today at the hearing, would you like to comment?
Yes, I would. In regard to Mr. Mitchick's Sir rebuttal, I acknowledge that the 0.5% deadband or the asymmetrical deadband range of 0.5% for refund and 2% for surcharge, that did occur prior to the most recent version of the fuel rules in 2011. And then further, in regard to why I made the proposal I made, in regard to Mr. Gelker's Exhibit 1, I chose to take a look at the impact from Edgewater 5, the logic being that this really wasn't an issue until Edgewater 5 was brought back into the generating the generation plan for Wisconsin Power and Light in 2023, for all of 2023.
All right, thank you. And I have just one further sort of clarifying question based on my statements as to the data request response exhibit. Could you clarify what staff's intention is as far as that exhibit? Are you planning to file all the data request responses or some subset of them?
I would plan to file everything except for the responses to the original initial data request, which was filed. The request itself was filed long before the actual filing of the fill cost plan by Power and Light, unless Judge Newmark would like those included as well. My understanding is that we have not included the initial data request for rate cases. But if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Okay, thank you. One more chance. Anything further you'd like to add today?
Nope.
All right, the witness is available for cross.
All right, any cross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so I did want to just make a clarification or two. So yeah, I included the RITSMA 4 exhibit on the offered evidence list, and that was intended to show the update exhibit. So with the updated fuel cost inputs, like you assumed, witness RITSMA. And I did want to just clarify I think your statement on the MyCheck SRSA rebuttal. I'm just going to put that up on the screen. You said you agreed. I guess there may be a little confusion because the commission did authorize an asymmetric tolerance band for Wisconsin Power and Light, and the order where they do so is contained in your Exhibit 3.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and and witness MyCheck says that according to his recollection, he only recalled that occurred for MG&E. So
okay, if I may, for MG&E, the 1% fuel band was symmetrical. It was plus or minus 1% either way, and this was since the updated fuel rules as of March 1, 2011, and the case I was talking about was back in under 6680 UR 114, which referenced what was going on with the hurricane season back in 2005. So that's long before the most recent version of the fuel rules.
Yeah.
And I'm just confirming that that is my understanding as well.
Okay. Okay, good. Right. Yeah, and I just wanted to confirm what staff intended for the data request response exhibit. I don't have a particular direction about the content, except that it since Stevenson 1, the response to Stevenson 1 was cited in testimony, it'd be a good idea to put that in, at least have that in the exhibit. So just to clarify. Yeah. All right. So I did have a few questions you're aware of from the offered evidence list. So just going to run through those. So I've been asking the parties with witnesses in this case to comment on witness Singletary's statement. Again, it's a direct page 3, lines 7 through 9, related to what gives him cause for concern, the factors in the case that give him cause for concern, and one of them being high market prices. So first of all, I was curious if you agree that from a high level, that statement, that you would agree that that statement accurately describes the factors that are causing uncertainty in this case.
Yes, I would.
Okay. And can you describe, in terms of you agreeing with that statement, what would you mean by high market prices?
Well, first of all, it would be any prices that are not controlled by a contract, and then beyond that, I would go along with what others have said. Essentially, you know it when you see it.
Okay, and in terms of in high market prices, so you're thinking about commodities.
I'm thinking about natural gas commodity, and then electricity, the LNPs.
Okay, but nothing that you've heard with respect to that answer from the other witnesses. You would support that answer from what the other witnesses?
Yes, I would.
Okay. All right. So next question is, the commission routinely approves fuel cost plans that make adjustments to the inputs that the applicant used to create its proposed fuel cost plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Has the commission ever made adjustments to the output, and in parentheses, the average annual cost of fuel or the monthly cost of fuel, close parentheses, of the economic dispatch model?
Well, one thing that we would do is that in the economic dispatch model, the modeling of coal, it's kind of difficult. It tends to be difficult to replicate certain coal contracts, so that the company may choose to use some combination of spot market or contract information, or anything that they might view as being representative of incremental costs. In years past, they might price the coal, the cost of delivered coal in the model to reflect that there may be a quantity, a cost break, depending on if they reach certain quantities of coal. Another example would be, and this wouldn't be for directly pricing the coal in the model, but you might have a situation where the price of coal itself is such that the economic dispatch model would not dispatch enough coal in order to avoid take or pay penalty. And so you might see a dispatch adjustment of a reduction in cost, so that the model would dispatch the enough coal so that any sort of take or pay penalty would be avoided. And then once you have the MMBTUs of coal from the dispatch model, then that is usually, that would be taken and applied to a coal inventory model, where you would have the coal contracts for coal as well as coal commodity as well as rail, and you'd have that priced out, and that would be ultimately what would be fed into the final the final fuel costs.
Okay, so the So just to be clear, the example you gave adjusts the dispatch model for a contractual, to avoid a contractual penalty. So that's something that's known in advance.
Yes.
And, yeah, and it's set by the contract.
Yes.
And that doesn't change the dispatch of the plant. It's something that you affect after the dispatch is known as a result of the dispatch model.
Well, if you're doing a dispatch adjustment to increase the amount of coal that's being burned, then you would take the higher MMBTUs and feed that into the coal inventory model.
Okay, so that's a separate model from the
Yes.
dispatch.
Yes.
But then the results of both of those models go into the fuel cost plan.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So any other examples where the output is adjusted after the model is run?
Well, there are certain types of fuel costs that are not addressed at all by the economic dispatch model. MISO charges and credits are not, generally speaking, are not really addressed within the economic dispatch model. There are other ways of analyzing that and coming up with an estimate of what those costs might be.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to confirm your understanding. The proposal that Witness Gelker makes, is that an adjustment to an input of the model or an output?
That's an adjustment to the output of the model.
Okay. So my question that I've asked everyone in different forms and with various accuracy or with understandability. But could another adjustment to the fuel cost plan based on actual past experience be used in order to align the results of the fuel cost plan to what's expected to occur in the fuel plan year?
Well, to a certain extent, I think in my direct, I expressed some concerns about the forecast for Columbia 1 and 2 in terms of coal conservation, what may need to be done to reflect the most recent performance of the railroads in terms of delivery, and to that extent that would apply to Edgewater 5 as well.
Okay, so just generally speaking, though, is your would you accept that inputs could be changed that would affect the output so that it better aligns the output to what's expected to occur in the actual plan year?
It's possible, but I would think that that would be somewhat limited.
Okay.
I don't think, I wouldn't expect there'd be anything that you could tweak inside the model unless you're just going to wholesale adjust the LMP values that are being used. You know, absent something like that, there's not that much wiggle room in an economic dispatch model.
Okay. And yeah, and I'm just talking about changing the methodology of coming up with the input number. So right now we look at like 1 day of the market price.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, like the example I gave with, I believe it was, with the Wisconsin Power and Light witness is when at one time the commission used the average of, I think it was 2 days in the market, one being, I think it was 12 months prior to normalize or average out the volatility in that market. So I guess if you could comment on whether that would be appropriate.
First of all, I want to say I don't really recall that happening, but I haven't done each and every case that's been before you. That's certainly an option that the commission could consider if it chose to do so.
Okay. All right, so let's move on then. So provide a working definition of the phrase extraordinary circumstances as it relates to mid-year rate adjustment under PSC 116.08.
I think it's sort of like on a continuum between unforeseen and unforeseeable. And there again, I would say, like the other witnesses, you kind of know it when you see it. And the one thing that for the company's subpart 3, I believe states that utilities may only request an increase under a mid-year adjustment one time per fuel cost plan year, so they need to choose carefully.
Right, I think it's more like only one mid-year adjustment can be granted, but yeah, whether it's applied for or not, it's another issue, I think. But yes, you're right.
Correct.
Okay, so, and just moving on, I want to be consistent with the other witnesses here and get your take on describe the circumstances in 2023 under which you would expect Wisconsin Power and Light to apply for a mid-year rate adjustment.
Well, one example would be is if there is a prolonged unplanned outage for a major generator. Another example would be if market prices for natural gas would have a significant change in either direction. And those would be the main two. Another option would be if something, MISO charges were to suddenly increase, unexpectedly. What the problem is it'd be kind of difficult to forecast what the rest of the year would look like for that as well. So that has I would say that would probably have limited usefulness.
Okay. And so I just wonder about your opinion on an issue that I guess was raised at the hearing. And So what's your opinion on the appropriateness of evaluating whether to seek or whether to consider a mid-year plan rate adjustment by looking at the potential to offset the difference between actuals and the fuel cost plan by looking at the projections for the next plan year?
I would say that'd be entirely up to the company. That would be a management decision.
Okay, but as someone who conducts the review and is familiar with the process or familiar with how to calculate the fuel costs, is that something you would do?
Possibly.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the rest of the questions let's see. Oh no, there's the modeling questions. Okay. So in the case, it looked like Wisconsin Power Light has used a different dispatch model. I just wanted to get your opinion, or whether you have an opinion, on Wisconsin Power and Light switch from enterprise planning and risk to PCI GenTrader to model its fuel expenses.
I think I said in my direct testimony that in terms of how each model deals with LMPs primarily, it's not, there aren't any really significant differences. It's pretty much the same calculation in the new model as was being used in the old model, with the exception that I believe PCI GenTrader, the calculations that are able to be done within the model, as opposed to having calculations done outside the model and then feeding those back in.
Okay. And do you know of any other utilities that use PCI GenTrader to model fuel expense?
My response would be consistent with the other response that you got. I'm not aware of any Wisconsin utility that would be using that. MG&E uses RTSIM, NSP uses Plexos, WEPCO and Pub Service use ProMod. So, those are the dispatch models that they choose to use.
Okay, but how about any other utilities you know of?
I have enough to do just keeping track of our Wisconsin utilities.
Fair enough. Okay. So did the switch from enterprise to PCI change your work in this proceeding as compared to prior years?
Not really. The only thing that changed is we're somewhat limited in time because the Power and Light had requested additional time to verify the results that it was getting with respect to the Edgewater 5 issue.
Okay, but you had the same amount of access and ability to evaluate the model that you have in the past?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks. So yes, what do we have here? Yeah, so you did have, so I just wanted to briefly mention, I think it's, you had made a statement on your rebuttal page 2 about the update exhibit and the process by which parties can respond to that exhibit. And I just wanted to be clear because I'm not sure. I think what you were referring to is kind of a standard practice where if an exhibit is filed post-hearing, there is an opportunity to file a response, countervailing evidence or rebuttal to that exhibit. But I wanted to point out that, I mean, the way that the timing of the filing of that exhibit provides very little time before the commission decision to actually have a process for rebuttal and countervailing evidence. So is that your understanding too, that when does the update exhibit usually get filed relative to the commission decision?
I don't have a real good feel for, on average, it just depends on the circumstances that, hopefully there's enough, it depends on how long it takes the utility to, prepare the information that then commission staff would take and evaluate and make a determination whether not more questions need to be asked and so on. And that would certainly be true considering all of the different moving parts that we have in the current round of field cases.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'd just be mindful, everyone, to get their information out as soon as they can. And I think the comment that when I added the information I was adding to the comment was, I believe, when Wisconsin Power and Light shares its information that you put in the update model, it's sharing that with the parties, the interveners as well, so that they would at least have that information to review ahead of the filing of the update exhibit. So that may provide them a little more time to gather up their forces to respond, but there will be very little time between, as far as I know, it's usually not a lot of time between the update exhibit filing and the decision. So just want to make sure we understand.
Yes, I didn't mean to imply that it was a great wealth of time. There was an opportunity, not a great opportunity.
Okay. All right. So I did want to ask you about a statement that you made in your SIR rebuttal. It's on page 3, line 5 through 8. I do quote it, so I don't know if you need that in front of you.
No.
Okay. So the question was, what do you mean by the phrase, the applicant made a business decision to select the economic dispatch model, end quote. And yeah.
Well, with the exception of the time that Power and Light wanted to use a spreadsheet model to try to perform the economic dispatch model function, the commission in that case ordered them to use a computerized economic dispatch model as opposed to something that was just put together on a spreadsheet. Other than that, I think the commission has had a rather hands-off approach in allowing the utility to select the economic dispatch model that suits them the best. As I mentioned earlier, there's a variety of different dispatch models that are used by the utilities in Wisconsin, and the utilities need to be free to make the determination of what model best suits them, because there are differences in terms of the amount of human resource support that's necessary for some of the models. I'm thinking specifically of the ProMod model. That takes a great deal of effort to maintain and to get to function properly. So, WEPCO and Pub Service are the only ones who are currently still using ProMod.
Okay.
And they are able to do that because they have the human resources to work with it.
So when you said that the business decision to select the dispatch model, you were talking about the choice of dispatch model.
Yes.
Okay, because I guess I just wanted to clarify, because your testimony, and I'm just going to bring that up on the screen because it's in the context of your testimony, which is always helpful. It seemed to be maybe it was something else, and the idea was that you're responding to witness Mychek's rebuttal, where adjustments are proposed to the fuel cost plan, and that led you to say that you have concerns about the possible appearance or suggestion that these alternatives could establish.
Yes.
And then you say that the applicant used the economic dispatch model. So how are those statements tied together? How is your concern about an alternative related to the dispatch model choice?
Well, I mean, given that the company was choosing to make an adjustment to the output of the model as opposed to tweaking an input assumption, my point was that they chose the economic dispatch model that they used. It wasn't forced upon them, and so every economic dispatch model has advantages and disadvantages. And in the case of Wisconsin Power and Light, it's one of the disadvantages is that their dispatch model does not work very well if you have a real imbalance in terms of generation that you have available versus the load that you need to meet. So this was not a problem until they decided it was appropriate to put Edgewater 5 some 400 megawatts of very economic electricity to put that back in their dispatch model. And the way they work their model is that they don't dispatch it against their load. They dispatch the model against their forecast of LMP prices.
And that is a function of the model itself?
Yes.
And you think using a different model would have created a different result?
I think that the issue was that there isn't much of an interaction between the LMP prices that are used versus the supply of generation that exists. If you had a model that would provide an internally calculated LMP, then there'd be an opportunity for more interaction between the generation provided versus the load that the company needs to meet, and you would have that in a model that internally calculates the LMP, because the LMP will be the portions of like the marginal congestion costs would be impacted by the relative supply and demand, the supply of electricity versus the need for it in a particular commercial pricing node.
Are you saying that a different model may not produce as much excess generation as the model that Power and Light's using now?
That's possible.
To what extent do you think it would? To what extent do you think it's likely that it's doing that?
Your Honor, we have some questions about Mr. Ritzma's foundation for answering some of these questions about what would and wouldn't happen.
Well, I can give you a chance to ask questions later.
Okay.
I couldn't give you a specific answer, and just in general terms, this is what could happen. Is it guaranteed? No.
Okay. I was just curious again about the LNP. So you're saying, we just got the name here again. PCI dispatch model receives an LNP price from an external source.
Yes.
And isn't that just the market day, the day that we set it at, like the market, the trading price?
Yes.
So would that be different from another, if a utility is using a different model, would that input be different? Or it takes the number and then it uses it to do something else with it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, in the model that calculates a full LNP, it would be influenced to a certain extent by the supply of generation as opposed to the demand.
But the Edgewater 5 situation, adding this unit in sort of late in the game, so that there's uncertainties, some uncertainties that relate to that timing. Do you have any other example of that in your experience?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so all right. Well, I guess that's. I guess, just one other question. I suppose when it comes to inputs to the model, at Edgewater 5, it was decided that Wisconsin Power and Light would continue operation of Edgewater 5. That was after the first field plan was filed by the applicant. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And given the uncertainties about whether it will run, at what price it will run, is there an alternative? Is it reasonable? Well, is one possible alternative for the commission to choose just not including Edgewater 5?
Well, if they did that, if they took out the entire Edgewater 5, we're talking about removing 2.26 million megawatt hours of generation, and even Mr. Gelker's proposal doesn't do that. There's still a fair amount of Edgewater 5 generation incorporated even in his Gelker 1.
Okay, so at this point, you don't see anyone proposing that Edgewater 5 won't run at all?
No.
Okay. And let me just back up one more step here, or maybe go forward one half step. So we know that the original fuel cost plan is really not on the table, right? That's with no Edgewater 5.
Correct.
But we have a MyCheck adjustment to basically just even out the average cost of fuel so that it is close to the last year's or this year's current plan. Am I getting that right?
I would rather you ask witness MyCheck what his proposal is.
Okay, and then, but on top of MyCheck's proposal, then we have the Gelker adjustment to excess generation.
Yes.
Okay, so all right, yeah, I'll need, and I probably can just do this through after we're done, just get some clarity as to what's actually on the table from the company. But okay, and then you have the proposal to adjust sort of the monthly fuel cost prices, and we wanted to go through that as well. So, so I was just trying to wrap my head around all of this, and I think the question I came up with was, can you walk us through Gelker's exhibit and show us what you would do to reflect the changes that you're proposing? And I don't see that on my list anymore, but I think that was basically the idea. So is that something you can do? Oh, here we go. Walk us through the Gelker one to show us how commission staff's proposed adjustment works. Is that a useful tool to provide in terms of having you to kind of elaborate a little bit about what you're proposing? Yeah.
Sure.
So I'll put that on the screen. And
okay, so if you look at the line number 11, and for January and February, the excess generation removed 454,000 and change and 321,000 and change megawatt hours. Though both of those are well in excess of the Edgewater 5 generation that was forecasted in the applicant's economic dispatch model, and so I limited the calculation for the excess generation margin removed to the forecasted Edgewater 5 generation for both of those months. The rest of the months aren't impacted by that approach, so it just has an impact on January and February.
okay, so I just want to be clear, when you said line 11, what's the written description on that line?
Excess generation removed in megawatt hours.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So yes. So just give me do you have the number available, what you removed?
I do, but that would give rise to data that I think the company would consider confidential.
Okay, but it's in the record in a data request or somewhere. We could.
Well, it would be in the record insofar as it's being represented by the annual amount. Now, the monthly amounts are not in the record as they would be confidential.
Okay, but if they're in, okay, so So basically, you would just be removing more. You'd be removing
Less.
than what's reflected in line number 11, column C and D. And by line number, I'm speaking of how it's described on column A. Excess generation removed. Okay, and so just generally speaking, is that, just explain your support for that change?
Well, my thought was that since Edgewater 5 was, and the incorporation of that into the applicant's economic dispatch model, that seemed to be the one that triggered the excess margin or generation removed issue, that I didn't think it was appropriate to remove from January and February more generation than what was being forecasted by the model for Edgewater 5.
Okay. And then for the remaining months, how does that?
There wasn't any impact.
I'm sorry.
There wasn't any impact.
So it looks the same as the Gelker.
Yes.
All right. So I believe I think if the commission were to choose that option, they would need the number on the record, or is it just the concept that'll have to be calculated later?
I would say it'd be a concept that would have to be calculated later, because these numbers will change again with the NYMEX update.
Okay, that's fine. And anything else on that explanation on the exhibit you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. Thanks for that. I try to follow along, but I sometimes need a little more help than that. All right, so I think that's what I have for you. Yep, okay. So at this point, I can allow follow-up questions to my set of questions. We can start with Wisconsin Power and Light.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have, I believe it'll be just one question.
Sure.
Are you able to hear me okay, Mr. Ritzma?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So you were asked questions about what would occur if an economic dispatch model other than PCI GenTrader would be used to analyze the facts of this case. Have you applied an economic dispatch model other than PCI GenTrader to the facts of this case?
No.
Have you received the output of any other economic dispatch model run by another person as applies to the facts of this case?
No.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Those are my only
Great. Any other questions?
Just
yeah, and redirect. Go ahead.
Yeah, clarify redirect here. So, Mr. Ritzma, earlier you had a conversation with the ALJ regarding the delayed exhibit and what the process or procedure may be for party responses to that. Would it be correct to say that you're just basing your response on what you've seen in previous dockets, that you don't necessarily have direct decision-making authority as to any procedure regarding any delayed exhibit in this case?
That is correct.
Thank you for that clarification. And then finally, did you have any further clarifications or anything else you'd like to add in response to your conversation with the ALJ or the follow-up question from applicant's attorney?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Great. Well, I think we're done with the offered evidence list. You can turn off the screen share. So do we have any other issues before we adjourn? No? All right. Well, we have our post-hearing schedule set. So thank you, everyone, for participating, being patient with my rambling. And thanks very much. We're adjourned. See some of you at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
You
stay.
stand. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.